Let me start first of all by thanking everyone for joining us at this evening's session. This is the final event of today's activity around Digital Lancashire's Reboot. And just to give you a backdrop on what the Digital Lancashire Reboot is, we had at the beginning of the year, we wanted to hold a great fanfare, a digital festival for Lancashire. And as the pandemic kicked in and the months went on, we realised that was perhaps not going to be viable. However, we arrived at a fairly natural point and conclusion that we thought it was vital that we check in, that we take stock, and we try and get a good handle, a good snapshot of what digital currently looks like in Lancashire. So we've hosted a number of events. So there's this one this evening focusing around activity in Blackburn. We've done other areas like Lancaster, Chorley, and Burnley. We've had some more thematic events. So earlier today we had a discussion around diversity and inclusion. We had a great one yesterday around the hybrid workplace. But ultimately, the idea is that the conversations that we have for each of these sessions helps to inform us at Digital Lancashire of what's going on and where we can better fit into that landscape and how we can better support you in the digital sector and the economy more widely. What I would say, incidentally, is if you haven't had the chance yet to have a look at the Digital Lancashire Manifesto, it's been on all the pages, the Eventbrite pages and the Reboot sign-up pages. And the reason I mention that is one of the outcomes I see happening in the Reboot is the manifesto is currently a version of ambitions and intent that we set ourselves. And I'm fairly certain that the last 6 or 7 months it has dramatically shifted and changed that. And this conversation this evening is a vital part of that. So we intend and anticipate this discussion and the others to inform the manifesto to make us more useful. So just a quick note, we are recording these sessions so that we can spread the conversation more widely so that people who weren't able to join can rewatch at a later date. And before I jump in feet first, I just wanted to thank Digital Lancashire sponsors. That's Hiscox Insurance and ABGI, who are partnering us for this event and are partners of Digital Lancashire. So what I'm going to do before grilling and putting lines of inquiry is I'm going to go, I would like the panel to introduce ourselves. So when I name check you, if you can unmute and then just let us know who you are, what it is you're doing, what you're hoping to get from this session. So we're going to start with Peter Hough, please.
Oh, hi. So yeah, so this is all new to me, to be honest. Never done anything like this before, so bear with me. But essentially, I'm the digital director of JGM. We're an agency in Rawtensall, part of a group of 3 agencies who work closely with kind of our sister companies, Shoot the Moon in Manchester, and Eat and Breathe over in Leeds. So we're very much kind of looking down towards kind of that Manchester route. So definitely, you know, looking to kind of network with you guys and find out a bit more about Digital Lancashire and what we can do together.
Marvellous, thanks, Pete. Cam Cothier.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, my name is Cam Cothier. I'm Director of eBusiness UK. Been around for a little while, set up in 1998, so got the grey hairs to prove it. You know, just, you probably may know this, but Google set up in 1998 as well. So sometimes I look back and think, what could have been? Hey, you know? But there you go. For the last 10 years, we've also been running an online retail operation selling smart home security devices. Well, that's what we do now, but we started off selling lots of gadgets and stuff. 2 sides of the business. One is the digital marketing agency for 22 years and about 10 years of experience frontline selling online. What do I want from this? I've heard a lot about Digital Lancashire over the years, but never really engaged. Not sure why, but really here to find out a little bit more about the Digital Lancashire itself. But also, as Tom, you said, this is about shaping the future. And you know, having been in the sector for a few years, you know, I'd love to be able to contribute if I can.
Brilliant. Thank you, Cam. Tom Mcpherson Pope.
Thanks, Tom. My name's Tom Mcpherson Pope. I'm the lab manager at the Making Rooms in Blackburn. So if you've not been to the Making Rooms, it's a creative technical space. So we've got things like laser cutters, 3D printers, CNC routers. And the way we work is we're a community interest company set up about 4 years ago. And the idea is that we've got lots of machines that local businesses can use instead of sort of paying for a very expensive machine and sort of employing someone to run it. They can sort of use our services. But also we're focused on helping entrepreneurs start out with this technology. So that sort of pathway starts by, on the weekends, we're open to the public for free. Not at the moment because of COVID. So we're trying to get back open at the moment, but for that side of things. And then, you know, when they've sort of come for a long time, their skills, you know, improve, and they decide, hang on, this is far more enjoyable than my actual job, and it's happened, and they quit their jobs and they start a company, and then we've got sort of studio space and accelerator programs that we run to help them in that sort of further part of the journey. In terms of what I want to get out tonight, to sort of to connect, you know, more with Digital Lancashire wide, because we're quite as the Making Rooms, we've sort of isolated ourselves quite heavily in Blackburn, but you know, in terms of a lab, sort of we should be servicing more of Lancashire wide, and also just to see, you know, are there any opportunities that we're missing out on? Are there any holes that we can help fill as well?
Thank you, Tom. Jenna Gardner.
Hi, Tom. Thank you. So yeah, as Tom said, I'm Jenna Gardner. I work at Blackburn University. I'm the assistant head of school for art and society at the moment. Previously, I've been there for nearly 20 years, lecturing in graphic communication on the animation and illustration programs. I've been in management now for around about 5 years, but I still do teach. I think that's really important. I suppose my interest really is always making connections with industry. As part of my role as assistant head, I'm in charge of curriculum and quality. And because of my background in arts, you know, I'm really well placed to work with those teams and develop that curriculum. And we, over this last year, during a lockdown, we've rewritten our entire suite of creative and digital programs. It's really exciting time for us. So I'm really interested to connect with people that can be a part of this new curriculum, help us to shape and forge it, and work with us more closely in terms of things like graduate opportunities, guest lectures, live projects, placements, etc., etc.
Marvellous. Thank you. Danny Davies.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Danny Davies from Blackburn Rovers Football Club. I'm the business development manager there and also director at the Hive. Passionate about the digital and Lancashire Digital. I've known Tom for quite some time. I do think that obviously, again, pulling more people together in a cluster within Blackburn is always something that I've been passionate about and is needed. I work in an industry that we've been forced into digital quite fast. We already use digital probably more accelerated than what a lot of people understand from a football club. And for me, it's just making sure, again, that we keep this cluster working together, especially from a Hive point of view and also from a club point of view. Yeah, everything's moving towards digital so fast. If you don't keep up with it, then you just sat behind, and I'm not going to be sat behind.
Indeed. Thank you, Danny. And last but not least, Pete Walker.
Yeah, found the unmute one. Hello, I'm Pete. I used to be vice chair of Digital Lancashire, but I'm not now. I live in Fennisculls, which is why I'm here. I helped set up the cluster in Burnley because I used to work over at Burnley when me and my partner had the agency JP74. But for the last year and a half now, we've gone different paths, and now I run a entity that does sensor and integration projects. But my clients are global. So I don't particularly have a local network, but always happy to join one. Thank you.
Marvelous. Thank you, Pete. So, in regards to in terms of the discussion today, in fact, if somebody says something you feel like you can add to it, please just feel free to join in the conversation. It's fine. But the first question is focusing, I suppose, really inevitably around the last 6 months, because the way what we had anticipated for the year ahead is now very different to well, it's just very different, full stop. So, thinking about the last 6 months for your business or organisation, how has it been, and how do you feel it is generally more for the sector? I'm going to fire straight to you, Pete, at GJM first. JGM.
Yeah, of course, JGM. Yeah. I guess for us, it's been it's more digitally focused, because we're primarily kind of marketing agency, so we deal with all types of projects from our clients. But there's been definitely a shift towards people thinking more digitally. And we've had an increase of kind of e-commerce work as well. So before you used to be a bit more kind of education based and a bit more kind of widespread, whereas now certainly the projects coming in for us are e-commerce, and whether that's we always try and choose the right platform or the right solution for each individual. So whether that's small businesses who are trying to kind of interact with their current customers, and it's the pub down the road who's now having to switch to takeaways, so they're doing we're helping them advise them on Facebook and how best to kind of get that strategy on there and interact with their customers, and just a small solution so they can actually take payments and ship the products out and deal with that. Or whether it's some of the larger clients we deal with where they're now having almost influxes of orders, and we're looking to kind of scale with them. So definitely it's been a pivot for us towards more e-commerce work, and definitely kind of a mindset as well for our customers to digital first.
Yeah, and in thinking of e-commerce, Cam, if I can come to you, because how's the last 6 months has been an opportunity or a challenge for you guys?
Both, as you can imagine. Yeah. A lot of after the lockdown, I think everybody knows, present company will know that there's been quite a spike in terms of e-commerce activity, not out of choice, but and that benefited a lot of our customers who are in e-commerce, and our own e-commerce retail side of it benefited quite considerably. And as I mentioned earlier, you do have to make some changes. So on the one hand, you say, okay, well, things that we sell through our own website, through our own warehouse, was okay. And I say okay, not great, because obviously everybody was in lockdown. So we had to shift to most of us working from home, but you can't ship product from home. So we still had somebody going into the warehouse, and we still had one person dedicated to man the phones, and overflows then went to homes. So quite a lot of changes took place. But one of the advantages for us, and why we benefited quite considerably, was that we do an indoor camera. And if you can imagine a situation where everybody's in lockdown, and most of us will have parents that we take care of, or parents at least we will certainly love, but some people are carers and would need to look at, just keep an eye on them, but they can't pop around anymore like they used to. So we saw a big spurt of sales of our indoor cameras that people then used to monitor their vulnerable elders. So that saw quite a bit of a boost. At the same time, there was a big boost in DIY as well. People at home, not with a lot of time on their hands. So that again benefited us. So lots of sales of outdoor cameras, alarm systems. So that's very specific to us. But then if you look at the sector as a whole, then of course there was a spurt there. Now, on the agency side, right, that was a bigger challenge, because our customers are very broad, range of sizes and different sectors. So what you saw happen across the board in business in general, we felt that almost identically. So basically we had our customers fell into three categories again, which is no different to business per se. You've got those that were fighting for survival, and some of our customers did go down, sadly. I mean, some of these companies, 20 plus years, family businesses who've built up a, you know, and it's really sad because, you know, these are people we've worked with for years and who become friends, and, you know, just overnight the businesses are gone. So you had those kind of companies that were fighting for survival, and probably no different now. But then you've got those who are now in recovery mode, who are saying, okay, we've been through this and we can see that there is, you know, no real light at the end of the tunnel yet, but we can't just sit by and do nothing. So they're sort of rolling their sleeves up and saying, right, we've got to do something. So they're coming back to us and saying, okay, well, can we help? Can you help with this, help with that? And then you've still got businesses, as you know, Pete said earlier, you know, who are in, who are saying, okay, we still want to grow. You know, so they'll then switch to something like e-commerce, and I guess, you know, if there is any moral in the story, is that, you know, people are pivoting, you know, and businesses who are dynamic are saying, okay, well, this is what we're doing now. It's not working, so we have to do something different. And so I guess a long-winded answer, but, you know, there are two different sides of our business. One has been successful, the other one has had its ups and downs.
Yeah, and Danny, if I can come to you, being that you work with a lot of local businesses, I'd imagine, in your role as the BDM at Blackburn Rovers, what's if you were to get your take on that over the last 6 months, what sort of feedback or what stories have you identified?
To be fair, it's such a mix. Just sat where I am now, a place that makes office furniture has gone, a family business that can well known for, again, many years. But then there's other businesses out there that have adapted really quickly, and it's to become really hard to find those that have been successful, and try and drive, you know, obviously revenues back into the club. I think what we've seen is, you know, Blackman, as I've always seen it, has always been, you know, slightly behind the curve in a digital format. Whereas what's happened here is the only way that you can watch Blackburn Rovers on a Saturday is by streaming it. So every fan who wants to watch the game has been forced onto a digital platform one way or another. They've had to have an email address. They've had to, you know, have a computer or a software system that can use that element of it. As a club, we're quite fast with digital. We've got technical analysts rooms for our players that, you know, is very technical in that area. We've had clubs come over to see how we're set up in that area. So we're sort of very much like, we're very forward thinking with our own plans, but obviously the way that fans come into the stadium and people that come to watch it, they've been forced onto it. So we've had to adapt everything to move forward with that. With fans not being able to come in the stadium, I've only got anything obviously within the TV arc or anything that's on the TV that's sellable, because without fans there, you can't see it. So I've had half my inventory slashed, but then being able to adopt on the digital assets of social media and moving right across, we've moved all our programs digitally, our LEDs digital. So yeah, we've been forced into it quite quickly.
And Tom, if I can come to you, because obviously Danny's looking at the from a commercial aspect in terms of the from a community aspect. So you mentioned the drop, which obviously isn't happening. So beyond that, what's been the impact for you guys of the making rooms?
Yeah, so the making room sort of inhabits the space between digital and physical, and it's the physical side that we've been having a problem with. So in terms of our sort of commercial services, we do things like 3D modeling and industrial design and things like that. And we can do that design work, but that usually is paired with something like 3D printing or CNC routing, and that's the bit that we haven't been able to do. We also get a lot of our revenue from funded programs. So most of those have been sort of workshop based, so for, you know, in a physical space. So that has been impossible to do really. But also those funding bodies have been redirecting those funds towards you know, COVID and helping businesses survive, which is of course what they should do. So the maker rooms sort of we were all furloughed until August, and now we've been sort of ramping up. And since sort of coming off furlough, it's growing very quickly because a lot of our clients, you know, had still been open and hadn't been able to use our services. So it's sort of a mix between that, where they're sort of itching to get ready to go, and then if they've got a long product life, then they're sort of holding off and waiting to see what happens. So that's sort of where we're at in terms of community, though. Yeah, it's been really difficult, because a lot of people, a lot of our users on the weekends, they come every weekend kind of thing, so it's sort of taken a big chunk of their life out of it.
Tough times, I'd imagine. And Pete Walker, if I can come to you, because we've had sort of Danny with the sort of the local economy aspect, and Tom's given us that community. With you as a relatively new business with, I suppose, with an international grounding, I suppose, is it a different story for you guys?
Yeah, we basically, I was in America in February, came back with, we're looking at all the people wearing a few masks, and basically got a big contract while we're out there. And then in March, it all started, and every project that I had from everywhere was cancelled or put on hold. Global companies, small companies, everyone just paused everything while they assessed it. So I got as far as by early May, I was sorting the screws in my garage into size order. And then the second week of May, basically everything kicked into life. Basically what happened was anything that people thought they wanted before stopped, because the world had changed. So they had to reconfigure. Then everyone spent at least 2 months trying to work it out. And realistically, the biggest thing that has changed is that when I used to go and rant in boardrooms, everyone nods, and then they say, great idea, you can save us a lot of money, automation, wonderful, get rid of that admin team, wonderful. Never get signed off, because basically they love Bertha in accounts or whatever, or basically it just doesn't fit with their agenda, or it sounds too scary. Suddenly I can just go in and have a half an hour of showing them what I can do, and they go, yes. And when can we have it? And can you do it now, please? So it's more or less been like that I've not stopped since May.
And is just that sort of anecdote where you say people are more keen to sign things off and get things underway? Is that UK centric, or is that globally, or is it?
That's global. Basically everyone. Well, from the people that I've been dealing with, again, it's like they've as soon as they worked out what it is that they need to do, they need it now. They can't wait. This is not a case of they're speculating on a 3-year business plan. They've worked out, they've already worked out, they're mostly either looking at losing 20-30% of their business this year. How do they actually do that without falling off a cliff? And that means that those difficult conversations, if I've got a solution that means that they can keep going, but they can lose that 30% and the business still is viable, then it makes sense. And that's the thing is now where, and now they need it by the end of the year. So it's good fun for me.
Opportunities. Jenna, if I can come to you. So I'm really pleased with the panel, actually. We're kind of getting a good mix of the community, the private sector, and all of these things. So in terms from an education perspective, I'd imagine it's been a fairly different, stressful in perhaps different ways than what everyone's experienced or other people have experienced.
Yeah. So life switched online pretty quickly. I think we had about a 6-week lead in, really. We were able to issue staff with technology, things like laptops, etc. We moved all our systems online. We tried to do it as much as we could because we knew that business had to continue. Obviously, our students still needed to gain their qualifications. Everybody probably was in the same boat, but the guidance from the government wasn't issued for universities. It was issued for primary and secondary, but tertiary was kind of left out. We were left to our own devices, and that's why you would have heard in the media some universities saying they were going to deliver everything online, some saying they were going to do part, so it was a bit all over the place with a real lack of guidance. But I'm really proud of what we achieved. I think some of the main issues we encountered were our staff having to adapt and innovate really quickly, from doing a classroom delivery model to adapting absolutely everything to deliver online. So all of our sessions continued and were delivered online. And due to the area that we reside in, Blackburn with Darwin, we have lots of students from deprived, disadvantaged backgrounds. So we ended up having to loan out a lot of kits and technology so that our students could access online learning. We take it for granted, but not all of our students have access to basic things like computers, phones that can stream, and internet connection. So that became really challenging. A lot of our students use the internet in free areas or zones, when they go and grab a coffee, for example. So these kind of things, it's sort of, we didn't realise they were challenges until they became them. We ended up on the BBC for the work on our fine art programme, online delivery of art classes, which is something we've never done before. And we also had our end of year art and design show online. I think I'm trying to post that into the chat, but I'm not sure how to, but I'll put the link in there. So we had hundreds of students all exhibiting their end of year creative arts work online, which is the first for us. And we managed that process all remotely. I think some of the things so I think innovations in teaching and learning were just fantastic, and I was blown away by everyone's approach and just the innovative practice, really. And we developed a 50-50 model of delivery to come back to in September, because it's a moving feast and we don't know whether we're going to be put back into an enhanced lockdown and have to do online delivery, for example. So we've developed a 50-50 model of delivery. And I think some of the issues are accessibility, tech again, and some of the same issues we experienced at the start. I must address the elephant in the room about the sort of mental health impact on our students in particular, but also our staff. It was challenging trying to support vulnerable learners and even students who became vulnerable as a result of COVID. It had a really negative impact on many students, and it had positive impacts on others. The mental health support, all the classes that they used to access, all the counselling sessions they used to attend, we had to move those either online, and that interpersonal reaction when you're trying to deal with things like mental health issues and young adults, that was definitely challenging for us. And I think as well, as part of my role, I champion a lot of placements, work experience. I develop a lot of collaborations between agencies and bring live jobs in. And all of that just stopped. We weren't able to do any of our placements. Nobody had the time to support or nurture our students when they were trying to just survive, basically. So I'm not entirely sure how those things are going to manifest themselves this year as well, how we're going to get those opportunities. So we're really pushing our students to be on LinkedIn and be on there now, and be getting the work out there digitally. But for me, as I'm a very touchy-feely kind of, I like to be around people. I'm a bit of a social butterfly. It's all about the people. It's all about the connections you make, the jokes you have, the beer you share, whatever it is that you're doing. And that our students are young and they're not socially adept in the same way that maybe we are. And I worry about their ability to network, perhaps, for the future.
Well, you mentioned that particularly the placements is a definite challenge. So I'm thinking not just sort of pandemic challenges, but as a town, as a location, what are the main challenges that Blackburn faces in a digital context? So I'm from Preston. I'm fairly well versed. I know the issues that we have here, but in terms of, because there's clearly a very active digital community in Blackburn.
Yeah.
Are there things that are apparent to everyone working in that sector? And can I throw that to you first, Cam?
Sure. Yes, there is definitely an active digital community there. Sorry, let me rephrase that. There's a lot of companies in the digital sector, but I'm not sure whether it's a community as such. And I think you've got a lot of individual businesses doing their own thing. In a conversation with Joe last week, I was talking, we discussed numbers of businesses, and it was interesting. I was looking through your manifesto, Tom, and I brought it up earlier, and I was maybe not that surprised, but Blackburn with Darwen has a much lower proportion of digital businesses than, say, other parts of Lancashire. And now, when in the first 10 years of our business, we did have a very thriving community in Blackburn, and it was predominantly driven by the sport agencies. Even the local authority had a digital development unit, DDU they used to call it, and they were sort of the champions of digital for the town. I think the local authority does have a digital champion still, but I think that's probably internally focused in the local authority. So yes, I think there's a lot of businesses. And sorry, going back to the point about the conversation with Joe, is that clearly we target a lot of these businesses, from a business perspective. So when we do our analysis, you realise that actually there's far more businesses in the sector, probably even more so than I'm looking at here. I think you've got Blackburn, Hyndburn, River Valley, Rosendale, etc. 560 digital businesses. And I guess that depends on how you define a digital business. But when we were doing some research, we found that just in the Lancashire area, there were, I can't remember the exact number, but it was in the high hundreds of businesses that are involved just in e-commerce. Now, these are businesses that we were specifically targeting over a particular size. So completely discounting the micro businesses who are sort of generally under the radar, doing lots of dodgy things on eBay. Not dodgy, but probably not declaring everything, I guess. But what I'm saying is that there are a lot more businesses out there than we've probably got records of. Yeah. But what I found not unusual, but I missed is in the first 10 years, because of all the events that used to happen, you used to meet lots of people in your business, and a lot of these are competitors, but so what? And it's still, we have some, friends I've known for years who are my competitors, and we get together. Sometimes we meet up for a coffee, and I think, Tom, that's how you set up Digital Lancashire in the first place, where a group of like-minded people got together. And I don't think we have that in Blackburn anymore. And it was quite, when we were looking at through your manifesto, there are a lot of activities going on, and it was interesting. You've got Burnley, Chorley, Lancaster, and Preston. And I thought, well, it was Blackburn in the manifesto. And so,
sorry, I was going to say it's a really important point, hence to the conversation today, that the clusters that are in the manifesto are areas where they've naturally emerged over time. We didn't sort of pick places and then tease out those companies. There were just clearly things happening there where there was evidence where we could support them, which is why I'm glad we've got everyone here in the room tonight to talk about these things. Pete, Hough, if I can just come to you, I'm just really curious what Cam said there, where he said there's lots of digital businesses, but not really a community. Is that something you feel in your experiences it rings true?
Yeah, I probably agree with that. Yeah, certainly, from a point of view here, wasn't really aware of Digital Lancashire or anything kind of going on before now. I don't know whether it's maybe the location where we're at or because of that kind of Manchester connection, but it certainly feels as though, you're talking there about kind of placements and students where they're more from this area attracted to kind of the big lights of Manchester and going towards that route down, down there. Certainly for us, it's, the staff we've got here tend to be kind of more kind of senior and experienced people where they've got kids and they want to settle down. They like it up here. But yeah, no, I'd agree with kind of that's probably one of the things I want to get out of this really was to meet kind of other people and help kind of build that community because yeah, there's definitely opportunities there to kind of share resources or help each other out on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to throw to Danny, but he's probably got some sports equipment and he's measuring his data or something. So Tom, if I can just in terms, if we've identified that perhaps there is clearly an active digital business base, but there's not a sense of community. Is there anything else that you've identified with the people who work in the incubator spaces at the making rooms? Are there any obvious challenges that being in Blackburn presents?
I mean, what Pete touched on there in terms of Manchester being sort of quite a big tech hub and so close to Blackburn, I think that definitely has an effect in terms of what's going on. So I live in Manchester and I did computer science here at uni about 10 years ago, and I sort of go to as many tech events as I can. So sort of everything in WeWork, and I actually stayed in Manchester because of the Fab Lab here. But sort of looking, trying to see what there is in Blackburn on meetup.com and things. They're really, it's few and far between in terms of sort of events for people. And I think that can have a big effect on whether someone wants to stay in Blackburn if they're very tech focused and they've grown up there. So yeah, I think it's sort of a chicken and egg kind of thing. So yeah, there's fewer people to set these sorts of things up, and so they're not going to be set up, and then fewer people will stay for that. But I mean, we sort of see quite a big divide in sort of the digital literacy, the computer literacy of people from Blackburn. So both throughout the ages really, but especially sort of in younger ages, some of the kids that come to Fab Lab are incredibly computer literate. I'm ashamed to say some are more computer literate than me actually, but and then sort of the flip side of that, probably touching on what Jenna was saying before, that some of them really struggle with sort of basic computer skills, probably because they've not had those resources. That was a bit of an aside, but yeah. So I think it's difficult to start a community to sort of get that activation point going. It's something that we sort of, as the making rooms, have tried to do, but I think again we've not sort of branched out to sort of other organisations as much as we maybe should and want to in the future. Yeah, just sort of. It's really difficult for us to put on lots of pro bono stuff. So we're a CIC, we're sort of 4 years old, and whenever we have a bit of turnover, it goes into sort of things like the Fab Lab and things like that. But it's a sort of place where we'd love to put on events all the time, kind of thing. But it's just funding is usually our problem.
Yeah, so noted as funding being a potential one. Danny, I'll just bring on this one. I'm not sure what point you got cut off there, but in terms of trying to identify those issues or barriers that are perhaps commonplace for digital business in Blackburn, and we've identified that perhaps talent drain is an issue, and I suspect that goes beyond Blackburn and is perhaps it impacts a lot of businesses within Lancashire, but also mentioned by Cameron in that Blackburn has this plethora of digital organisations, but perhaps doesn't have that sense of community. Is there anything else with the work that you do with the Hive or with Blackburn Rovers? Any other challenges that are obvious to people in Blackburn that is just difficult to overcome?
There's some of the really simple stuff, like one of the things that we've seen, more the elderly people just being able to use the digital aspects. So again, there's a skill shortage of just basic needs across, quite a lot of the Blackburn people. For us, I mean, I've been on the phones many times with, people of the age of 71, 81, trying to get themselves online to be able to watch the games on a Saturday. I suppose, again, it's that hub. We don't seem to have that sort of a hub in Blackburn. I know that there's talk, and I know there's conversations going on to try and pull that in, but there is, as Cam says, there's a lot of digital businesses across Blackburn, but they don't seem to be coherent in one sort of place. I mean, in Blackburn, where I first met you, Cotton Court was always a place where you got quite a lot of digital people together, and there was breakout rooms where you could go and chill out and go and relax and go and have a chat about things and ask each other for help should you need it. We don't have an area like that in Blackburn as such. As I say, I know there's conversations going on, and I think the sooner it gets here, probably the better.
Thank you. And Pete Walker, sorry, I want to second name you, two Pete's, it gets very confusing. Would you agree with those? So I'm thinking along the lines of talent drain around issues around digital inclusion or access to technologies in thinking about this lack of a sense of a digital community. Does that ring true?
Well, basically, it's about scale as well. It's like if we've got lots of companies, but they all do lots of different things. So that's made it hard to sort of like put a sort of like a hub thing together, because basically everyone's interested in what their piece of digital is, and as that has expanded, as Cam said at the start, a lot of the digital businesses are actually they're a department in other business. They've got digital departments, they're IT departments, they're doing the infrastructure, they're doing the whole servicing of the company. But they're still numbers, they're still there, but the company itself will not think of itself as digital. So is there anywhere that we're supporting those people? Then no. But if you look at sort of like what we tried to do over in Burnley, you've got the fact that it just takes time and will of a few people to try and pull that together. But also, if it may be that perhaps it needs to be a joint thing of East Lancashire, because then we've got a bigger pool of numbers of people that can actually be in there, more resources for actually putting on events, etc. We've got people that are willing. It's just a case of actually trying to put it into a framework where they can start to make a difference, even if it's doing events at Making Room, but actually getting people in to experience something that they haven't. We've got a room full of that stuff there.
Yeah, and interesting, you talk about the people who are working in digital roles in perhaps non-digital companies and so on and so forth. We did some research recently, and just to help frame the discussion. In Lancashire, there's of the nearly 20,000 strong digital workforce, most of those, 2/3 of those people work in non-digital companies. So there's clearly, so when we talk about community, it's not just digital businesses, it's people doing digital things. The other important thing, I think an important statistic we discovered in the research is that of those businesses, 95% of micro businesses were mostly a collection of small businesses. So coming back to you, Jenna, when you were talking earlier about the issues with the difficulty of getting placements, I certainly know, being from, we at 3 Man Factory, we fit into that category of being a micro business, and we often have the conversations and the emails around whether it's T-level students, apprentices, or work experience. We just don't have the capacity at that, certainly not at this point in time. And I'm sure it's a really frustrated discussion you've had with everyone, that we wouldn't be able to give students a meaningful placement because of the size we are and the resource that we couldn't dedicate for it to be valuable.
So the way I've managed to get around that is to work directly with companies and agencies to work on speculative projects that, you know, they're not going to lose any money on. They can brief in the students, and the students can work collectively and creatively on those projects. So things like back burner projects that you've always had in your mind, speculative projects, clients that you'd like to pursue, but you don't have the time because of your day-to-day business. So we've managed to get around it by having some really good live projects that we have developed with different agencies and organisations. I mean, normally we would exhibit those things and show everybody in person, but you know, we've managed to put a lot of the work that we've done into our creative arts show that's on our website. But I think just generally a sort of comment about Blackburn, having worked in education sector for 20 years, where I've also worked as a designer as well. Blackburn in the past has suffered from somewhat of an identity crisis. As a brand, Blackburn doesn't really sell itself very well. But over this last 5 years, at least, I'm seeing people mobilising, I'm seeing people collaborating, forging connections. There's a shared vision. We've had, the Festival of Making, British Textiles Biennial, the making rooms has popped up, and Tom and I have done a lot of work together with, especially with students. You know, that's been an amazing resource for us at the university. Blackburn Museum and Art Gallery, just to name a few of the collaborations and that shared vision that we've all been working on together on numerous research projects. But I think Blackburn's identity is just all tied up in our creativity and our craft and our making, and that shared vision, you know, that passion, determination, and resilience, really. And, you know, I think something amazing is happening in Blackburn, and I know COVID has kind of stopped that sort of crest of that wave, but you know, the Festival of Making will come back hopefully next year, you know, bigger and better than ever, and will provide those opportunities that can so often be seen as a weakness for Blackburn, you know, bringing our communities together. There's a lot of cuts in funding across the piece, but the community is strong in Blackburn, and I think that I want to sort of chime on what everyone said about, you know, the strategy out of all of this, you know, is to collaborate and communicate and work together. So we do need more things like this. We need more, you know, I think we used to have a drink and design thing. I mean, Tom, I travel over to Preston and I see you more over there than I do in Blackburn at networking events. You know, there's not as much going on in Blackburn.
Yeah, some really some brilliant points raised there, Jenna. It's almost like you've got my notes in front of you, because you kind of, I have questions and you answer. So one of the things I wanted to focus on was, because I don't want this to be like what's wrong, what's doom and gloom, what isn't it terrible, what a terrible 6 months. You know, it's important to get the balance of well, okay, we've identified the challenges, the issues, the pain, and I was going to follow the question around, how do we fix these? And Jenny, you already identified, well, actually, to get placements, you talk about these back burner projects, the things that could be something, and that's great. Danny mentioned in terms of identifying that perhaps one of the reasons there's not a sense of community is there's no hub or center point for people to come together to be a community. So we're already starting to address those. We've been calling it the magic wand in these other sessions, where like if you had a magic wand and you could just fix things, but it sounds like this is already happening just through this discussion by identifying things. The talent drain, I think that's a Lancashire-wide problem. So if I may, I'm just going to steer the conversation to, the other thing I was going to talk about was Blackburn's identity, but you nailed it perfectly there with an identity crisis, because what we're very aware at Digital Lancashire that everywhere is different. Everywhere has its own particular set of good things and challenges. Preston Preston loves Preston and has Preston challenges, and Chorley and Lancashire and so forth. So in the context of that, I mean, how important is individual identity for clusters, or is it the ambition and vision that you referenced, Jenna, that's more important? So I'm trying to find that balance between, okay, well, this is heritage, this is who we are, this is who we've been. Is there an argument to carry that identity forward? And that's open to anyone who wants to put themselves forward. Yes, Cam.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. You know, should we be breaking up into small geographical areas, towns, if you want to call it that? And I think it was Tom mentioned Manchester being the closest to Manchester, or Tom or Pete, I can't remember now. You know, over the last probably 2 years, you know, I've had a lot of engagement with Manchester, with universities, and also attending lots of events over there. And part of the reason for that is the ecosystem that they have. And it's not an Oldham, Rochdale event or a Salford event, it's a Manchester event. And this is where I think Digital Lancashire has a significant role to play in that sense, is that, you know, with Lancashire, yes, of course I'm Blackburn, I'm Blackburnian, and I've lived here for almost all my life. But is Blackburn big enough to compete with the Manchester and the Merseyside of this world, where they've all got together, they've grouped together, the towns and the cities have got together, albeit under a mayor and a greater Manchester. But even, you know, you talk about digital in Manchester, it's Digital Manchester, and it's not Digital Rochdale, Digital Oldham, blah blah blah. And so I think, you know, if you've got an issue with numbers, and you know, Blackburn is a relatively small town, and Preston's a small town, and Burnley's a small town, but put the three or half a dozen towns together, you've got gravitas, you've got numbers, you've got a wide range of skill sets, and Digital Lancashire can, you know, help with, you know, developing that engagement, collaboration, and help create that ecosystem. So I've been to, like, I think Pete, you may have been involved in, like, the Barclays, I forgot what they call themselves now, but they have an initiative for startups and, you know, funding tech startups or something like that. Now, I went into the Manchester one and I sat through some seminars and some practice pitches and stuff like that. I had no idea that we had one in Burnley. That's because we're not engaged as one Lancashire, you know, whereas Manchester is. And I think we are missing out by Burnley, Chorley, Lancaster, Preston, Blackburn, Rawtensall, wherever. And I think we'd be much stronger as a Lancashire entity and creating event. Look, would I go to an event in Burnley organised by Digital Lancashire? Of course I would. I mean, I know it's Burnley, but I would still go. But do you know what I mean? I mean, Preston's what, 20 minutes away? Lancaster's 30 minutes away?
Yeah,
Do we need all these little towns?
It's one of the great challenges we've had, not just at Digital Lancashire, but I think any organisation that tries to deliver a pan-Lancashire service are these. I wouldn't want to distill it right down to parochialism, but there is a distinct set of needs. So, for example, in Lancaster, on the back of one of the main issues in Lancaster is physical space for businesses to grow their teams. There just is not the room. So we undertook a report. It was called No Room to Grow, and on the back of that really rattled a few cages and made people aware. And as a result of that, things like Fraser House have happened on the basis of. So I completely agree, Cam. It's very important to have a unified Lancashire voice, because one of the things we want to do on one of the broader ambitions is shine a very bright light on what Lancashire does. We have some incredible people and organisations doing incredible things across the region. So we want to be able to take that outside of the region and say, look at us collectively. But we are also acutely aware that the places do have a unique set of issues. So I think it's important to identify those microclimates, for want of a better term, to be able to help. So if Blackburn had a specific issue, so around the community hub, as Digital Lancashire, we would want to think, well, okay, then how can we help make that happen? Who do we introduce, and how do we join the dots? And so think about joining the dots. I'm keen now to bring in the positive vent of it, and I've just made a note there, Cam. I think that's a really important aspect, incidentally, just about this pan Lancashire representation, and it is a difficult conversation that will rage on for some time. But thinking about the strengths of the cluster, or thinking about the champions or success stories, and Pete Walker, I'm going to come to you because you're always a reliable brain. If ever I'm looking for a connection, or do you know someone who works in something, you're usually good at having those people in mind. So when in the context of Blackburn, people, stories, or things happening, who comes to mind?
Euro garages. If you, in a slightly big way. The amount of data that they're throwing around every day is ridiculous. It is huge. The amount of different people that are involved and trying to help it make sense and grow is huge. And the fact that they have invested in the town. Now, if they can do it local, they will. If they can find people that can do reliable pieces, they will back them. That, I mean, realistically, at the moment, that trumps everything that's going on at the moment. But yeah, but then you just go down to the other thing, that it's almost like you could almost say there is a cluster made up of lots of micro businesses that just need some support. It's do that, and that actually creates the thing that makes it together. But it is at the moment where that whole world of local doesn't really mean anything now as well. No, but you don't. We're not supposed to go and meet people. So suddenly you've got the fact that someone down other side of the world is quite happy now to do a project with you. Because, well, what's the difference of me talking to you in this little box in front of me rather than someone in the rest of the country? So there's a whole range of opportunities that are happening now that probably also weren't possible.
Thanks, Pete. And do I also have, when it comes to those names or those success stories, when you're networking or talking, Eurogarage is a great example. And I've obviously I Google things while people are talking to make me sound more learned. But I can see the latest story, because there's been a number of stories from Eurogarages, but opening their new £35 million Blackburn HQ. I mean, that's a great building with a great price tag. So Eurogarages, who else comes to mind when thinking about those Blackburn champions or success stories?
Star Tissues.
Who's that?
Star Tissues. Khalid. Some of the work that Khalid's been doing there has been astounding. I mean, his processes and everything that he's done to drive his company forward has been huge. He's the ex-chairman of the Hive, and he only ended up leaving because obviously his business ended up mounting and going so far. He's also still sat on the lap. So again, we still have people, within the Blackburn that are reaching out across Lancashire. I think that bit that you did mention, not to go negative, I mean, that combination of pulling Lancashire together has always been something that, we've been driving for. I know you've sat on panels for this, Tom, for years. That fundamentally is one big part. If we can get that right, I think everything else would fall into place. It's a huge challenge, but positively, we've got, some of the biggest names come from Blackburn. So we've just got to keep going off the back of it.
Yeah, incidentally on that, when we were talking earlier about identities and this age-old problem around unifying Lancashire, and I've mentioned it at the other events, is if you haven't seen the work that Debbie Lander and the team at the bid for the Capital of Culture 2025 are doing, and if those are they're putting forward Lancashire. So if you have a look at Lancashire2025.com, they've got a fairly unique proposition around reimagining Lancashire as a digital city. So it takes away place and it takes away geography and that parochialism, and focuses much more on skills or emergent themes. So just as an aside, just adding to what you said, Danny, I'd encourage people to explore and have a look at that, because it's fascinating. And as like you say, if we can crack that nut of being able to unify Lancashire, or find a way to have that consistent story that everyone felt was true and authentic and could get behind, then that is a genuinely powerful proposition. So keen just to bring it back to Blackburn, and thinking about those champions, which I've made note of. In thinking then about what Digital Lancashire, because there's been a mention of where Digital Lancashire can perhaps help. So whether that is maybe helping to facilitate putting on more of these types of events, making sure that the community is more visible to each other. Where else do people see Digital Lancashire fitting in, or what more do you think we could do to either be more visible or to help achieve these ambitions and or solve the issues or problems? And I'll open that to the floor. That's open to if anyone has a suggestion. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, one thing in terms of where the maker rooms, where Digital Lancashire could help the maker rooms, is sort of setting up collaborations or partnerships. So there's a funding. There's a grant open for a thing called Festival UK 2022. I'll link it, but it's basically getting together sort of 3 to 8 teams, so sort of organisations or individuals that sort of span the STEM industry, looking to sort of create something huge to sort of the scale of 60 million people kind of thing. So it unfortunately came across my desk a bit too late. The deadline for entering it is tomorrow. So unless we're going to stay up all night, I don't think, as a partnership, I don't think we could do it. But sort of, any sort of signposting to that, or sort of being a platform to be able to sort of share that with people and help sort of find partners in something like that would be great for us.
Thank you, Tom. Noted. Yes, Jenna.
Yeah, I thought I was muted then. No, doing your trick from earlier. Yeah, so I think Digital Lancashire and Creative Lancashire could connect more with the emerging talent coming out of universities. And I know we already do that kind of work together, but more of it, because it's absolutely vital that education and industry are working together to develop the graduates that are needed. And a couple of you have mentioned the phrase talent drain. We refer to it as graduate retention, and Blackburn has a massive issue. Lancashire has a massive issue in retaining our talent. So we know that our students are fantastic. They go off and they stand on the same platforms as any other graduates from any other universities, and they get fantastic jobs, and they leave and they take all that experience and knowledge and creativity with them. And it's really important to us as a university, but as a cluster, a Lancashire cluster, to retain our talents. It's what makes us distinctive. It's what our identity is forged upon. And I think there are also quite a lot of opportunities for businesses, industry, private sector companies to work alongside education. As a reciprocal, mutually beneficial relationship. So I do a lot of work with companies. So my as an academic, and I share this with the hundreds of academic staff, we have access to pots of research funding that would innovate. Tom, you just alluded to that in terms of accessing funding and applying for that. Well, we've got hundreds of experts, at the university who, through the university, can apply for research grants and funding, and then projects can happen. The UK Research and Innovation website, UKRI. I can't post anything on the chat for some reason. I can't put any of these links on there. But if you go into the Arts and Humanities Research Council, there is a specific theme strategy on digital economy. You would all have access to that if you worked with education. And the key themes they're looking at are sustainable digital societies, inclusivity and equitable digital societies and content creation and consumption. And there are hundreds of thousands of pounds of funding available for industry, you know, to work with education to access these things and create these innovations. You know, so I think I could do a better job of it, but I think we all could do a better job of all working together, not just with the businesses of now, but the businesses of the future and tomorrow. You know, the jobs that don't exist yet.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been identified that this issue of communication or collaboration, I think, is safe to say it's a recurring theme across the emerging clusters across the region. Absolutely. In terms of thinking then about, I'm just mindful of time as we approach the sort of closing-ish minutes. I'm keen to know. Before I do that, actually, in terms of where Digital Lancashire fits in, did anyone have any other thoughts on that before I cheekily move along? Yes, Cam.
Yeah. Oh. Sorry, go on, Jenna. You're right.
There was just one last comment to make, and that is that, you know, we get almost 100% of our creative and digital graduates into employment within 6 months. So there aren't enough jobs, you know, for our students to go into, essentially. Like, I think we've got high levels of graduate employment. I think, you know, there are many more opportunities. So from our end, our students get jobs and they do really well, but mostly they go further afield. It's the jobs that we need in Blackburn and Lancashire.
Thank you, Jenna. Sorry, Pete, before I come to you, Pete, Cam was just going to say something about...
Yeah, sorry, on the issue about Black Champions in Blackburn, at the risk of blowing my own trumpet, there is Star Academies, which is a network of schools that was started off in Blackburn some 10 years ago. Now we have 30 schools around the country, including the best performing school in the whole country as well, which is the girls' school in Blackburn. Not a lot of people know that, but it's been the top of the league tables for the last 3 to 4 years running. Outstanding judgments by Ofsted year after year, time after time. I think 4 outstanding consecutively. So you know, doing pretty okay. I think we're serving now 15,000 pupils around the country. So you know, it's a growing organisation. We're employing some 2,000 people now. Wow. So it's headquartered in Blackburn. So that was one of the champions in Blackburn. Nowhere near as big as EG, but still, it's doing okay. Your issue about getting back to Digital Lancashire, one of the things that I just remembered was Graham and Brown in Blackburn last year ran a couple of events. They were very much theme-based. I don't know whether any of you guys were there, but the one I went to, or two I went to, were based around artificial intelligence and an interest, you know, just out of interest really, and something that I was working on for the business. But it was amazing to see that it was just done by a handful of volunteers, and they filled the whole room, and it was full of a lot of very knowledgeable people, far more knowledgeable than me, and a lot of practitioners who knew AI inside out. But the beauty was that the presentations were from, so the one I went to was a guy from AO, you know, and the point a number of colleagues here mentioned is that there are people who work in a digital world, but for a business that isn't necessarily digital. And I'll put money on it. One of the biggest digital companies in Lancashire is probably British Aerospace, but wouldn't necessarily automatically regarded as a digital company. But the number of people they employ in digital and software must make it one of the biggest companies. So going back to, you know, the Digital Lancashire again, and I'm trying to apologize about just throwing ideas out that may sound a bit silly, but you know, theme-based events, so AI-based, e-commerce-based, whatever, you're going to get like-minded people all in one room, which does ignite collaboration and engagement, rather than having a plethora of businesses that are so distinctive and different, that you may not get that engagement. So that's just another thought. And then, because it's Lancashire, it can be Lancashire based, and you can throw away all the parochialism, because I don't think digital people care that much about parochialism. And that's a personal, I get that off my chest.
Thank you, Cam. And I appreciate that. In terms of theme based, we have so the tech talks mentioned there, we completely get behind and champion, because they are great, and they were great. I think they're coming back. They've just, I think, had a bit of funding injected into them. But around DL's events, we ran one, for example, a few weeks ago, last month. But this was around the dark web. It was a tour around the dark web, which was it was well attended, and some of the, in fact, someone today said it was perhaps the best event he'd experienced and been on. And I'll be honest, it was weird. It was fairly shocking and surprising. But you're right. Sometimes those things are the hooks that get people talking and get people meeting. So thank you, Cam. Pete Walker, over to you. You had your hand up.
I know, but then Cam stole me. I was going to mention Graham and Brown, basically as themselves as a digital champion, because the whole reason why they have those events is because they went through a massive expansion when they realized how digital could revolutionize them. They actually have put it all in place, and now a lot of that team have maybe moved on, but all the pieces are now there and they're ploughing on with it. And then you got that nuclear company as well that's now based in Blackburn, or A System. And they've got a lot of data analysis and everything else that's to do with nuclear.
Marvelous. Some I've made a list of all those, so certainly people to talk to. Listen, it's we're approaching the quarter past hour, just at the end of the session, so I'm going to wrap things up there. So a couple of things that I'd like to know, and the first is first of all just to thank everybody for attending, for participating, for giving your time and giving us your points of view. I mentioned before we open the session out to public that this genuinely is critical and vital for us to get this input. If we want to help and support as best we can, and I think the discussion we've had is going to go a long way to address that. And certainly I would like to assure everyone here that this is not a talking shop. The one thing we do not want to happen is we've had this conversation about Blackburn, thought that was very interesting, and then we go on to the next thing. I think this is the beginning of something. So let me reassure that the whole context and idea of Reboot is to make sure that things happen, that things move, and that hopefully we can become instrumental in helping to facilitate or help to fix those things.
Tom, out of interest, how are you going to sort of, out of interest, because you say you're going to make action points to move it forward, yes, how are you going to measure that? Because for me, one of the biggest things that I do see missing, obviously, and this is with my Hive hat on now, yep, is collaborations. Like you said, it's not a talking shop. We're already in deep conversations with Marketing Lancashire to make sure, again, that we're working in cohorts with them. We'd like to make sure that the Hive and Digital Lancashire are also in the same sort of thing. It's about that jointness of being able to work together and drive this forward. So what are you going to put in place just to know that this is where you've stepped forward and made sure that obviously you've made progress?
No, it's a good point, and hold us to account. I like it, Danny. Thank you very much. But
that's all right, mate.
Well, in the first instance, so if we go from top level down, like I mentioned at the head of a session, the important thing for us is that our manifesto is in line with all of the discussions that we've had yesterday, today, and that we'll have tomorrow. So this discussion around Blackburn will feature in there. On tomorrow we've got a wrap-up session where we'll probably try and explore that a little bit further. But for me personally, what I'd like to see is to see Blackburn becoming an active cluster. Digital Lancashire facilitating that, and part of those initial cluster meetings is working out the agenda, is to work out those, like you say, what are the next steps, what do we do to ensure. So broadly speaking, outside of clusters, Digital Lancashire, we work closely with Lancashire County Council. We have an SLA with them, and in there are detailed the things that are expected of us, KPIs, things that are measured. I'm not saying we go to that granular level at a cluster, at clusters, but it's certainly important to keep in mind the agenda and the things that we're working towards. So in the first instance, it's the manifesto that it informs. on the back of that, what we sincerely hope is that the Blackburn activity happens naturally and we can be a part of that.
Perfect.
Which leads us perfectly to 9:19. I was like to say 9:15. That'd be late too. 7:15. Thanks once more, everyone, for joining us. I'd just like to thank also our sponsors, ABGI and Hiscox, and most importantly for tonight, everyone for joining us. Thank you, everyone. Really, really appreciate it.